release of Ant-Man and the Wasp, we now have 20 movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So today we're going to stop and rank all 20 movies in the MCU from the worst to the best in under 11 minutes. Now, before I give you my ranking, go ahead and tell me down below, how do you rank the movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Which ones do you love? Which ones do you hate? And if you strongly disagree with my placements, that's fine. That's cool. Tell me down in the comment section, but don't just tell me you disagree with me. Tell me why. That makes for a much more interesting conversation. All right, I'm running out of time. Let's get started. Coming in last place is Iron Man 2. The cast does the absolute best they can with a script that's just jam-packed with way too many plot lines. I don't think any of these particular plot lines are bad, but with so many different storylines going in so many different directions, it just cuts out all the tension and urgency inside of the story. And as soon as we get connected to one storyline, it just skips right to the next one. At best, this movie feels like a setup for the Avengers, but unfortunately, this movie is easily the most disjointed film in the entire franchise. Coming in at number 19 is Thor: The Dark World. For me, this movie just falls flat. The tone shifts from like a Lord of the Rings epic in space to a buddy comedy from scene to scene. The dramatic scenes ring emotionally hollow. Malekith is easily the most boring and forgettable villain in the entire MCU. And the story doesn't necessarily have big, gigantic, glaring problems, but it's even so boring I fell asleep talking about it just now. So this is easily in the bottom 2. And number 18 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now I know a ton of you love this movie and you're gonna give me a dislike for this placement alone. Go ahead and do it right now. I'm okay with it, but for me, this is easily the most distasteful film in the entire MCU. The tone shifts radically from scenes of torture to Looney Tunes humor to mass infanticide, just scene to scene. With the narrative structure and delayed ego reveal, this movie doesn't have a compelling villain or conflict until late in the second half of the movie. So for me, this is the least rewatchable film. Number 17 is The Incredible Hulk. This is probably the most unnecessarily hated movie of the bunch. While it doesn't necessarily have the tone and humor that we're used to, the story works well enough, and I find Edward Norton to feel more like Bruce Banner than Ruffalo does, and the final fight with Abomination is probably the most underrated third act. Coming in at number 16 is Captain America: The First Avenger. Now, I love the first hour of this movie as it's telling Cap's origin story. There's this deep sense of classic values and nobility. Also, the production design and score are top-notch. However, the movie loses steam when he fully becomes Captain America, as the movie kind of montages through years of World War II and skips straight to the climax. So unfortunately, while I love scenes in this movie and elements of it, it never fully lives up to its potential. Number 15 is Iron Man 3. This is another movie where I never fully understood the hate that it gets, except for from comic book fans. I understand why you felt betrayed by it. Shane Black's script does a great job of delivering some amazing action sequences, in particular that plane rescue sequence. At the same time, the infamous plot twist feels like it traded a potentially great villain for a bit of a villain trope in what they did with Killian. In its efforts to be clever and subversive, it didn't give us something better, it just gave us something different. Number 14 is Thor. From the look of Asgard to the deep, rich themes about family, legacy, and betrayal, Branagh brings this great sense of Shakespearean grandeur to the film. There's also some nice fish out of water humor whenever it gets to Earth, but the tonal shift when it gets to Earth never fully gelled with me. Also, because the main conflict of the story deals with Thor's ego, the story lacks a certain sense of urgency as it moves forward. So the story never feels as big or as important as the world it takes place. Coming in at number 13 is Avengers Age of Ultron. To follow up the Avengers, Whedon decided to go for more of everything. The action is bigger, the quips are more plentiful, the emotions are deeper, but there's also way too much plot going on. For that reason, this is probably the most confusing movie in the entire franchise. So while the highs are very high, the lows are also pretty low. Number 12 is Ant-Man. With this movie, they tried something different, a heist film, and the end result is one of the smallest scale, but the movie uses that to its advantage, often quite literally. Some elements can feel very familiar, but the movie makes up for it with a charming and funny cast. At number 11 is Ant-Man and the Wasp. Coming off of Infinity War, instead of upping the ante, they wisely cranked up the fun antics, and the Wasp makes for a great addition as she packs a mean sting. Some could complain that there's a serious villain problem as the villains pose an ant-sized threat, but I think part of the film's charm is that it's a MacGuffin story about several different groups of people chasing an item. This movie isn't trying to be the biggest or best Marvel movie, but it just might be the most lighthearted. Bringing us into the top 10 is Doctor Strange. With this film, they once again found a way to expand the world of the MCU by introducing us to some spellbinding magic. But for me, this is also the movie where I can most feel the Marvel origin story template kind of forced onto the film. But it's more than made up for with the fact that this movie has some of the most interesting visuals in the entire franchise. Coming in at number 9 is Thor Ragnarok. Coming off the most mediocre movie in the entire MCU, Taika Waititi injected this movie with a double dose of humor and energy. From the new characters to the score to the color scheme, this movie just oozes fun and vibrance. A few times the movie does sacrifice dramatic tension for a quick joke or just to kill off the Warriors 3, but in general, this movie was such a pleasant surprise. Now, I wish there was a way for all of the next 8 movies to make it into my top 3, but that's not how rankings work. So don't get too mad at me when your favorite's not high enough on the list. At number 8 is Spider-Man Homecoming. The best thing about this movie for me is that it gives a high schooler's perspective on the world of the MCU and being a hero. Tom Holland plays Peter Parker with such a youthful fun and innocence that it's hard to not get swept away in his charm. Like the Ant-Man films, the scale is fairly small, but unlike the Ant-Man films, the main antagonist spins an intriguing web that our hero must untangle. The end result is one of the most purely fun Marvel films. At number 7 is Black Panther. Coming off one of the campiest movies in the MCU, Thor Ragnarok, Ryan Coogler delivers one of the most thematically rich films in the entire series. The movie has its light moments, but that's combined with a complex story about a king and his kingdom. But the real secret sauce here is the main villain, Killmonger. He may be villainous in his actions and radical in his beliefs, but his values and convictions are so compelling that it sways our hero and Wakanda by the end of the film. All this makes for one of the most mature and morally complex films. Coming in at number 6 is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. By making this a political thriller, once again, the MCU has demonstrated just how much diversity is inside of this series. While still keeping the fun and the tone of the other movies, it adds political intrigue into the mix. And by adding Robert Redford, it adds a sense of respectability. Add to that some amazing action sequences, and you get one of the best constructed blockbusters of the last 10 years. Number 5 is Guardians of the Galaxy. What initially seemed like the MCU's biggest risk turned out to be one of its most heartfelt and charming additions. From crafting the quirky characters to the soundtrack to its odd sense of humor, this movie is just packed with personality. This movie was one of the most pleasant surprises I've ever had at the theater. I just instantly fell in love with this world and these characters. Coming in at number 4 is Iron Man. Watching this one today, its lack of pretense and non-stop joke telling can almost make it feel a little bit quaint, but its simplicity also makes for effective world building, and it gives us a great little story arc for Tony Stark. But the magic here, and in most of the MCU, is that Robert Downey Jr. has incredible chemistry with everyone. He brings this sense of charm and charisma to every single scene, and he elevates all of the people around him. 10 years later, the first movie is still one of the best. Bringing us into the top 3 is Captain America: Civil War. One of the best things about this franchise is its ability to tell standalone stories and interweave multiple franchises together, and that's exactly what this movie does. It sets up Black Panther while telling its own standalone story and being a logical follow-up to both Age of Ultron as well as The Winter Soldier. The story manages to craft a scenario where we can reasonably believe that the differing values of our characters would tear the Avengers apart. And the cherry on top of all of this is that it delivers a comic book fan's dream in that airport sequence. Our runner-up is The Avengers. This movie has a certain lightning in a bottle quality to it, as it was the first time we'd ever seen a bunch of characters and their franchises come together like this in a movie before. Whedon wisely chose to use a streamlined storytelling format in order to provide plenty of room for action and interaction between our characters. The end result is the movie with possibly the wittiest dialogue as well as the most crowd-pleasing and exciting finale. But coming in at number 1 is Avengers Infinity War. After years of teases and build-up, Feige finally dropped the biggest and most anticipated film of the entire franchise, and for me, it absolutely lived up to the hype. It delivers big laughs, big emotions, big, epic action sequences, and a truly shocking finale. But what really pushes this one into the number 1 spot is Thanos. They managed to craft a villain that's both terrifying and emotionally resonant at the same time. While we certainly don't want him to succeed, we understand where he's coming from. So for me, Avengers Infinity War is the best movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So there you have it. That's my ranking of the MCU. How about you? Share your ranking down below in the comment section. Which ones do you love? Which ones do you hate? And why? And if you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, TV reviews, ranking videos, but the key thing is I don't want to just talk about movies. I want to talk about movies with you. So please share your ranking down below in the comment section. If you've already clicked that subscribe button, consider ringing that bell so you get notifications whenever I post new videos. And as always, thank you for watching.